Ehud Olmert, former Prime Minister of Israel. Thank you very much, sir, for joining me. We have now seen a signed digital copy of the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and the United States. We'll come to Lebanon in just a bit, but given what you've witnessed between 28th of February and today, which side do you think is realistically in a position to proclaim victory at this point?
Well, I'm quite, I must say, I'm quite confused or embarrassed to be able to provide a judgment about it. On the one hand, Iran suffered a major military attack, which eliminated the supreme leader of Iran and quite a large group of senior political and military leaders in Iran. And for a period of time, Iran was completely under the control of the air attacks on different military installations coming from Israel and America. So this was certainly a military defeat to Iran. However, when you look at the agreement, the bottom line, after the signing of the memorandum by the Iranians and President Trump, it appears that everything has returned to what it was on the 28th of February. The Iranians were committed for a long time not to develop nuclear weapons. And they had an agreement with President Obama. And it looks like the present agreement between President Trump and the Iranians is similar, perhaps somewhat weaker than the original agreement that President Trump withdrew from in 2018. So, yes, there is a good reason for the Iranians to think that they were not forced to do something under the military threat and attacks that they were not prepared to do without it. And so they may have a good reason to be satisfied with the outcome. And in the meantime, there is a big margin between the original promises and commitments made by President Trump and the final outcome.
I ask you this question because Iran appears to have secured significant concessions. It had insisted that Lebanon should be made part of the deal. It has managed to tell the United States to withdraw forces from its vicinity. U.S. dollars 300 billion will be spent in rebuilding efforts, and while it will free up Hormuz without charging a fee for 60 days, it will negotiate with Oman how the strait is to be administered after that. On the nuclear front as well, it has declared it will not procure nuclear weapons, but that's something it had been saying all along. How do you read all of this? Any specific gains that the last 110 days of war have yielded for America?
Well, I think that there are some exaggerations in the descriptions that you made. Iran will not be paid by America $300 billion. There will be a joint effort to establish an international fund. It remains to be seen who will invest in this fund, if at all. Certainly, it is not guaranteed that America or any other country will be part of this investment of $300 billion. So I think there are certain words that are written in the memorandum which are not really practical or consequential or real for something that will happen. And also, of course, let's not ignore the fact that while the Straits of Hormuz were closed, which certainly caused economic damage to many countries, but also I think that the siege on Iran caused also an economic damage to Iran itself. So I think that these definitely, and this is what I said before, there is a wide margin between the statements made by President Trump on the first place that Iran will be destroyed completely, that Iran will not have air force, will not have missiles, will not have navy, will not have any of the things. And in reality, of course, this is not the case. Iran will have all of this. On the other hand, I think that Iran also learned a certain lesson from this confrontation, that the military power of Iran is limited, and their ability to inflict damage on the state of Israel is also limited. And the fact was that there was a lot more damage caused to Iran by Israel in this violent military confrontation. It's true that one of the main achievements of Iran is the linkage between Lebanon and this agreement, which is a source of great concern to the Israeli government. I personally think that there is a likelihood that Israel can negotiate a political agreement with the Lebanese government, which will be helpful in forcing, at the end of the day, the disarming of Hezbollah, which will be a very significant outcome of this confrontation. So there are many pros and cons and many weaknesses in this agreement, and some significant achievements to the Iranians. And as I said from the outset, there is a big margin, a big gap between the initial statements and commitments made by President Trump about the objective of this military confrontation and the actual outcome, as far as we can learn presently from the memorandum. Of course, it still remains to be seen how the inspection of the nuclear program will be activated. This, I think, is very significant and still remains to be negotiated across these 60 days. So we hope that at least there, the Americans will use their power of persuasion in order to make sure that the nuclear program will be supervised and inspected by the IAEA from Vienna, the International Atomic Agency in Vienna, that will indeed prevent Iran from proceeding forward with a military nuclear program.
So the very first paragraph of the memorandum says the United States of America and the Islamic Republic of Iran and their allies in the current war are signing this MOU to declare the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. Israel is not mentioned, but it is an ally of the United States. How do you think this current Israel administration will read this specific clause in the memorandum?
I think they read it as you interpret it. They think that this is a bad agreement. They don't spell it out in so explicit manner because Netanyahu is very much dependent on President Trump. President Trump kept saying all the last few weeks that he will force Netanyahu to do everything that he, Trump, wants him to do, and that Netanyahu will not have the power to resist it. And I think that while the government and Netanyahu are unhappy with this agreement, it is likely that, at least for the time being, Israel will not do anything that may endanger the stability of the ceasefire. Of course, the Secretary of Defense of War, Peter Hegseth, said that Israel will have a right to defend itself against any violent attacks by Hezbollah. So it remains to be seen whether Hezbollah will abide by the commitments of the Iranians for a total cessation of hostilities, or it will continue to attack violently the Israeli forces, because that will provide an opportunity for Netanyahu to continue the Israeli attacks on the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Remains to be seen.
We've seen strikes earlier today in Lebanon despite this agreement. We've heard the Israeli finance minister say that Israel will not pull back from South Lebanon. Does this dissonance between Netanyahu and Trump over Lebanon have the makings of a deal breaker?
Well, as I said, I think that Netanyahu's attitude is entirely different. He wants to continue the military operation in Lebanon. There is no question about it. Had it depended on him, he would have loved to continue the military operation against Iran and against in Gaza and against the Houthis. This is the reason why I and many Israelis are totally opposed to the policies of the Israeli government, and hope that Netanyahu will be replaced in the coming elections in October of this year. But as I said before, I think Netanyahu is unhappy with the agreement. He doesn't spell it out publicly in harsh terms because he doesn't want to appear fighting against President Trump. But there is a gap that starts to develop between him and Trump. Already in the last few days, Trump said several times that the Israeli handling of the situation in Lebanon was not characterized by proper discretion and wisdom. And he offered the option of Syria fighting Hezbollah, and he said the Syrians may do it perhaps better than the Israelis, which is an public insult to Netanyahu. So I think there is a gap becoming more obvious between Israel and Netanyahu and Trump. But I think that Netanyahu will be very careful before he says something that may be interpreted by Trump as a personal insult. Because that, as you all know, Trump is completely unpredictable, and he can switch positions overnight. Yesterday, he already said that while he doesn't necessarily love the idea that Iran possesses missiles, but if the Saudi Arabia has missiles and the others have missiles, why Iran will not have missiles also? I mean, the destruction of the missiles was originally one of the objectives of this operation. Now, Trump seems to be giving a permit to Iran to build ballistic missiles. So Trump is unpredictable, and I think one of the most obvious outcomes of what we have seen in the last few days is that he going a long distance from his original relations with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and that likely that this gap will grow.
Sir, let's talk about the election that Netanyahu faces towards the end of the year. Will he go to the Israeli public calling this deal a betrayal? Is that something that will win him sympathy amongst his supporters and others? What's the mood amongst the electorate now, in your view?
I have to be careful offering an opinion about the attitude of the electorate, because I don't really know. I think that his political base is utterly disappointed with this. There is no question about it. Some of the media supporters, the most prominent media supporters of Netanyahu, spoke in the most extreme manner against this and against the president and against Vice President Vance and against Secretary Rubio and against all of the moves made by the president as of late with regard to this agreement. And this certainly is something that is going to influence the public opinion of Israel. I don't think that Netanyahu can afford himself to have a direct frontal confrontation with President Trump, because one of his major political assets over the last few years in Israel was his close relations with President Trump. He said, only I can have such access and such intimate relations with the president that is so important for the state of Israel. So what is he going to say now that the president has betrayed the state of Israel? And what will he say about his judgment and about his policies and about the strategies that he has adopted for a long period of time? So I think, from a political point of view, it's not going to be helpful to Prime Minister Netanyahu. I hope that it will help bring his demise politically in the state of Israel. There should be no doubt about that. This is what I want, and I hope that this will happen. So while I think that the agreement is lacking a lot, and that this is not a great victory for the United States, I hope that at least one of the outcomes of this agreement, as much as I don't love it, will be the political destruction of Netanyahu.
Israel was part of coordinated airstrikes against Iran's nuclear facilities last year as well. Does the declaration made by Iran that it will not procure nuclear weapons and leaving it to the future negotiations to determine what happens to its current stockpile of enriched uranium constitute enough of a guarantee to prevent Israel from attacking Iran in the near future?
Well, I certainly hope, but as you mentioned, the IAEA supervision and inspection is supposed to be useful. I hope it will be. I don't trust the Iranians' leaders. They haven't changed. They are the same ultra extremist, fundamentalist, religious fanatics, and they haven't changed their attitude. Wants to bring the destruction of the state of Israel. There is no question about it. And I hope that the agreement will, and the possible economic and financial benefits to Iran will prevent them from violating their commitments, and that they will allow the IAEA inspectors to do a good job inspecting and supervising the commitments made by Iran with regard to the enriched uranium which they possess. But this is something that needs to be carefully examined on a daily basis.
So before we end, here's what the agreement also says, that the two countries will respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity and refrain from interfering in each other's internal affairs. Does this mean regime change is off the table for now?
Yes. I never believed that the military operation by America and Israel was sufficient or was destined from the outset to bring about the collapse of the regime. You're talking about a big nation. I know that when you talk to an Indian with your 1.4 billion people, Iran is relatively small. But 100 million people, almost 100 million people, is a very significant country and that their administration has been quite stable for over 47 years now under the Ayatollahs. And I never thought that one or two or a few weeks military operations can bring its demise, and I don't think that it has done so. So the regime will continue unless the Iranian people will violently and comprehensively and steadfastly and consistently try to force them out. But I don't see that at this point it is likely to happen.
Thank you, Mr. Olmert, for joining me. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.